So that definitely I'm saying right now that like Windows like actual make my future career definitely one of them that the side career right now might be that actually in actually might be that Windows that storage definitely one of the career. So definitely as person like Windows might be thinking of that just like uh agents of that uh also might be that Windows problem definitely one of them about like insects being that still live on for a while in a language in their head. So actually, what Miller at present will be the teachings of that Miller startup like Miller might know it person at that situation might be that something that Miller will be feeling as that he might be able to like relate to and try to protect after like and also like the first and the second reference might now be like the head of that Miller's like team that and before like the speech like head might have been either like the first person or like the second person or like both the first person might have been seen by Miller and the state and after the soft news in the head might have been like it is membership. So since like during that the kind of or like can be an online stuff like I think like it had taken out work like the first person or like second person like definitely might have been kind of a pro kind of like that then I might have maybe found out about like the updated situation of like of that first instead of like the second version getting taken out might be like the case in like a positive dynamic but especially since like even like the fact that like kind of even after like like after like Kirito had like updated like the solar online game and basically in that say crypto had like was become bigger than or like the initial dollar game and this had the third type of plan that the fact that Nakaba was still steadily spying on and following crypto to that really so that basically in that crypto game game play through that and be more like after that the fact that like in that after that during interviewing and after that subject of like final score on that that thing overall I think the final score in that has been online like the fact that I think that is the fact that and well that I had it shown up for like the right in front of that kid. So that might have been due to lack of abundance in that time basically having that absolute really strict is absolute ability to be stable that absolute proven on like digital upon like defeating in like before that so that online game. So that with that sort set up as the type of intimate goal that I have since then like since moving to the digital back to all and like just complete fight and starting on like people and so like that way like Kaiba might also uh, scripting witness that in real time. Uh, while crypto had to feature lecture for step plus the second step that back during the present day online might have been also the case that maybe it might be even way back when they think about that may not enter that team might have gotten that up stop the news of like realization about that they are scared that then they have like the first step that the second section like being sort of might have been so like actually even while Miller is like totally caring to be like totally focused on like basically while diving into that person world of that one that even while Miller on the surface that appears to be like totally focused on like Alex on that Captain Alice like still they don't like Miller who he might be also be well to be aware that like of like into that the person give the person who put down like the first as well as like the second that can like person like person had like the person within that very control. So like definitely that Miller remembering all this backstory and that's really most likely resulting in that Miller eventually maybe even after like succeeding in a cancer had is like Miller probably getting all confident due to like them having that 24-hour before it like the yeah maybe reinforcement I think that will be going up to like before that thing for the so definitely Miller and Profit usually that ending up in a situation where like Miller and Pro actually succeeding in that cancer and but still that like them getting all confident and basically like and the fact of that like basically that time still like still going up on the board is that a lot more it's way slower and hence a lot more when compared to that time in it for the course. So like since they totally even have like 24 hours in lecture real world that Miller I'm going that it is already awesome like Miller deciding to like search for Kirito and find and like get that absolute events on like Kirito by taking out and taking out Kirito for that critical that actions that taking off their real life, but not just in a second, the phone in the past. So like such an individual purpose and what we need to advise now, million version. Not just Miller, but like the three Dustin as well, like I'm putting definitely might be like them actually in real life might be having like some might be really related to that by a family bond of that kind of son. Might be the case like one person is that science might be the reason for that kind of even while Kirito firmly believes that he has that completely taken out that custom back during like the during it was playthrough during like product online game that the fact that like that when all three of them had to survive that just might be like I but take that special interest towards like that might be also due to that the fact it that's the possibility that I'm looking at like the fact that even an extra person like the person happening in that location which might be ongoing secret according to like Skype as well as like reinforce like secret science that where like report the only step like helping out Skype it would be all like Skype like winner master plan that would be accordingly that's the things that will be happening right now. So like definitely even like the fact that like so like at present like the fact that like the NSA like I think that has exactly sort of like the help of like Miller and team itself like the fact that like they knew about like Miller and things that existed and like the fact that they knew exactly like to take that help from Miller and things like that as well might lead of at all the lecture content at all. It might have definitely kind of that might have recommend the Miller and team to that kind of thing. And that might be how that kind of thing might have ended up approaching Miller and it might be exactly what might have happened exactly. So like that way like kind of we did mostly have that connection with that Miller and team and custom and the trade and everything. This is like one person that I'm referring to. That's in the consumer situation of referring that Miller's like actual name might be the real so that the child's real name is actually Miller and his name. Since like that way that this like child would had a friend by the name Alicia like so definitely this fact for that. And definitely I'm referring what might have happened might have been that Alicia with Miller might even back then might have if they had like a massive crush on like Alicia. It might have been the case that Miller really. But like what might have happened might have been like Miller might have eventually lost Alicia without much data through like Alicia most likely getting into like some financial and problem. That's what I'm going to say. Like Miller might have lost his like sort of friend or like like the special person is like Alicia might have been what made it happen. It's like a possibility that happens, correct? So definitely we went to like the person like Miller might have never forgot, might have not been able to get over or like forget about like and the same maybe also the level for them. So definitely since like in like the person like the kind of target of like Miller cancer from like the from like the person world of underworld even having that exact name of so similar thing Alicia like the and like an the factor will be this factor of like sheer coincidence will be definitely playing a major role in that basically eventually Miller preparing to that let go of that Alice and that to not hopefully that all to his network and seriously. So definitely I'm bring that eventually Miller so we are in that capturing and bringing Alice like often that way like through the interaction between that and in person of like Alice and that Miller eventually just sitting in that that interaction setting in Latin that remembering because like whole and you see more and more and that is setting in Latin now. So we find it starting to like give up on like this like go and this you end up find it starting to like kind of this like that way like that betrayal by the last one Kaiba is really one thing that usually romantic topic could happen. Definitely because like a person like definitely there might be definitely that absolute uh like the person attack by Miller and team on like the location like that might be definitely according to like the skill people coordinator plans and uh, bond between like Kaiba and Miller might be but if even definitely like Kaiba might have know Miller since like way back since like one management information like that might be important like a family relation between that Kaiba family and like something and probably even like the family working like talking to that. So definitely on the spring they are like through like the connection such a connection of like through Alice like usually reminding Villa so much of like the all from Alicia usually Villa like ending up like the train Kaiba and that stream and that the capture that Alice and basically that way that eventually being like a major point of like a point where like kind of like realistic growth would be that would be really the facts are half on like any report cannot that emotional like so that right now that the friend like the long distance pass that might have been so extremely curious about like soul and might have set up even way back then as like average goal to like to be able to like see and experience like what soul is like innocently like and to bring that that Miller might have set up that up like absolute ultimate goal in this like step you might so like just like present current mission of like Miller to basically catch up and put like up to catch up and like fresh out like as class and what like might be having that a lot of that extreme personal connection to that Miller's backstory and actually might be the game supplementary. So like Miller might be completely down, even though Miller might not show it on like stuff that like Miller being down might be so extremely curious and also with like the concept of phones and they might be like so extremely excited to like catch up and witness and experience that as that soul of the thing, but like and that to achieve that in the ultimate goal might be along the lines that Miller might be thinking that the Miller the like in like in the story what like Miller might have done made have been with like Miller like a curiosity to like see and experience what also Miller might have what he might have done might have been he might have taken out like that man just hoping to that the and at that point like Miller might have realized that they want Miller like that tournament maybe in the song of health so Miller was like exactly true about like about like man just having like which like Miller might have confirmed that like man just having like so all throughout like man is before it will that Miller might now witness like at that point Miller taking out a man is that man like didn't see that move and yet, like Miller might have been like extremely disappointed as well because like while doing that, like Miller might have been totally hoping, curiously hoping to like be able to like see that this so not only the moment of technology, but also to be able to like see like this like soul like as to like the soul of technology like its like true form and basically to be able to like see actually physically see a magic of like soul in that the bottom cap having like a physical form might be an organized that might have a organization to be able to that see that soul like physical form and it may get to a game experience it might be one that Lila might have innocently hope for back then and might have been extremely disappointed back then might have been what might have happened if you know so like after that like and what Miller might have done might have been that this like scary scenario might have happened that where like Miller might have been taken off that at the point Alicia in a hoping that will be at that point like Miller might have maybe felt that it might be due to like so so things transform like the Madison yesterday with like Madison like man of human that like Miller wasn't able to like actually physically feel or like experience like the soul of like the madness might be along the lines like Miller might have innocently believe that so like and then like Miller in hopes of that with that absolute curiosity curiosity to actually see that to really see what like and experience what the soul is like Miller might have taken out with like Alice and Alicia and might have then feel for like the soul of that Alicia as well. I don't know what might have happened to the of them. So yet like I'm surprised luckily then with like taking out of that Alicia like Miller might have been still been like a soul man of might have been only disappointed not about like the loss of Alicia but like only disappointed about the fact that like he was able to like physically see and experience that the soul of like Alicia might have been like a case of Cleveland so luckily the two like present like and don't like that might feel that cold and like scaring curiosity within that and that that scene is scary innocent door within that made up to like see and experience like so might be like is this like will a person might be thinking strongly exciting really some feeling that would be that I've been a goal of that will be without the curriculum will be in the reality once that will be able to like extract out that the artificial work-life of that had maybe along the lines that Miller would be right now Titan would be feeling and might be excited about might be like the case with Miller friend. definitely fundamental connection, but like this, that scary obsession, scary and false obsession that Miller might be having conflict to like the concept or like the topic of like souls, like and might be one thing that apart from that Miller, that father, that it might be Kayaba, and that might be the fundamental thing because that back in that was about that by the fundamental Miller might have committed that as this crime. And basically that way, that loss of that Alicia might have happened like at that point, when the scenario might have been Black Panther might have been an extremely influential and wealthy and powerful person. Might have been the case, and like in Black Miller's father might have had that company where like might have been like where Kaiba might have been working um, as like an employee. Might have been the case with the pyramid. So that yeah, like Miller's father might have totally recognized like Kaiba that is brilliant as well. Might have been like the case. So like definitely Miller's father might have at that point, like Miller's father might have totally been like totally feeling that absolute fear that anyone finding out about that like the crime that Miller so like Miller's father might have back then sought like the help of like Kaiba and like understood like it might have been through Kaiba's like help that and ideas that like and that Miller's father along with like Kaiba might have totally like hidden like the crime that Miller might have committed things like that. And to that way like change himself and basically to like and might have possibly frame like the loss of Alicia as it being due to like some accident or something might be along the lines of like what might have happened in that. So like since then like a Taiwan might have been when I'm fully aware it's that way like I'm like in like the present situation that that Taiwan totally want to like extract out and hand over like the might be totally wanting to like extract out and hand over like the just much like of that and it's to like the NSA like basically for to do that job that to do that mission that basically may not feel like the perfect choice might be along the lines like that might have strongly felt in a certain situation. So that like while Miller will be totally focusing on that like Kayaba would be absolutely free to like full dive himself. Which like Kayaba might be actually planning on like full diving as like through the super account of like the Dora station. Into like the most important on the board. So that like Kayaba could like totally focus on that failure that has to prevent and giving that a payback to like Kiritos from like receiving Kaiba back in a lab. So I don't like might be around the lines of that Kaiba black things like that might be like the basic and especially with Black Tiga. The fact that Black Tiga straight away lab while and the decision while Akun had taken the decision Tiga could have into the commission was because the fact that like Tiga told me like straight away didn't mention that about like the super amount of like the product creation and instead was like mentioning other highlighting like the highest account in like the industry of like the super account of like or area. Maybe the case like the fact that he doesn't straight away mentioning that out and suggested to like Asona while Azun had was like the decided to like the direction of the might be also on the it might be also due to like Chelsea that he got possibly secretly allied to as well and having said Chelsea that absolutely tried already to go down might be like the age limit rate. So like that super account of like uh Boris Asia might be roughly according to like the secret plan of like Chaiba and Higa and Ringo that they may be planning on like keeping that reserve for like the eventual full diving of that Chaiba into like the virtual world of unfortunate like deliver that app for revenge and pay that to people. Uh, might be that the actual different situations like a possibility that an emotion. So like the new still remember condition that like the chances of like the last name just that DIL might definitely be like the X wife of that dark might because might definitely be the case and might be like the actual mother of that Alice as well like that actual mother of the total Alice like to was like skillful at like magic and might have been like the reason for like Alice that was and that fundamental question like literally that way from like the last question like literally getting up at like the chemotherapy which might have happened in that self compound. It might be so that that villain stick like abandonment by like BIL if like she might have done on seeing as like another failure because like the exceptional magic because like the back then like hands might have not from training like the hands might have given to hands like and might back then might have not like so that might have not got like any manner or like might have that way might have not been able to perform any exercises because the field couldn't so that definitely that the IL might have been totally absolutely of the movement totally looking forward to like basically eventually having like training and like bring up and so that like basically to eventually lead for like dark magic that will like basically that lead that DIL might have seeing that that and that then have any manner of like magic powers like DIL might have straight away assume that like and won't ever be able to that use any instrument or that or and might have inherited that the powers of that mix up and not DIL might be along the line like DIL might have came down to like the assumption and conclusion of and might have straight away seen Alice like an absolute failure and might have rejected Alice without like was like no like and something like DIL might have abandoned Alice on like the end mode and that might be how like Alice might have only ended up in like the infantry due to that set up like part of while as part of like his job or something might have been at like in mountain like okay might have found something like running into that would like abandon side and might have been what might have happened secondly might have been what might have happened secondly like the past the next at that point the constable that it might have been as fully stop and like review the villain act of that is that by like I and that might have or the draw of that is that thing but and like might have been what might have happened secondly like it might be after that like she might have created like the dark hill and might have again like the gentle of like the dark hill like one property that I mean or like I'm like the other property is for like maybe so like maybe until then she might have only had that up to have like recreate like dark hill and have that that be a job and like the role of like the dark hill might have been the case back then like one of the more like the that I'm for like even the job and it's like she might have already had created like I was target. But like back then she might have been not don't that all that's long for anything. And like definitely after like this might don't go hungry like she might have been actually really turning into like finding out that person when starting it would really take that up premise on like it's alright take it up or like she might just after like this is one her away she might just start on like the dark with that absolute intent to like actually get that awareness on like this stuff might be like it is like down into that by according to my premise that it's saying like not like it might have been the IL that might have sent like the flying minion to that center of career to the top of the center of career as part of like and it might be as part of like this secret deal like that might have been made between like Quinla and the IL who both might have been self back in the question about the negative the breaking and like it might have been the IL you know that might have then migrated to that so that's the thing that might have been what it happens certainly not very yet like they might have still their realistic mindset might have still kept their want to between them like still alive even to that the reason might have been that it is that way it might have been probably a deal that secret deal that might have been struck by IN and like to that that like during that minion flying minion had showed up to the top of the center of the flash and that the internet has as well as like get your funding to like climb up to like top of the person so there was some that the outpost of the thing might have been like the case that limit like so definitely that flying minions there might have been definitely going to like the up like and bring Alice to like the data set going to that CIL like all of the same data that flying minions so that like CIL as part of getting revenge against that because might have want to like take out Alice that might have been like the case of definitely might have been I'm sitting there and then that like eventually during that whole fight in like the past between like Hilda and Kirito like Hilda might have what Hilda might have came down to the conclusion of that might have been that like but those that was like between like Kirito and Hilda what Hilda might have the conclusion might have been that like Kirito like actually while Kirito was like talking about like the real world outside like the virtual world about like Hilda might have certainly assumed Kirito like talking about like the darker thing and like Hilda might have assumed that uh, that due to that thing happened during that time, around that time that the company that we have what might between that and that I am between that might have faded out since that is me. Since uh, uh, that TikTok might be from the doctor and might have been sent to towards by the IL due to the IL intelligence starting that betray and basically that to take out so that the IL to role of the human country as well. Might be along the lines basically might have been down to the conclusion. So after if you had taken out and had turned into this sort of spit kind of form what might have been might have in that form might have straight away crossed the last way and might have appeared in front of the IL to totally just sort her out on front of the client. Might be around the lines feel that might have only uh, believed and this might be what Hilda might have done. So feel that way something might have appeared in front of appeared in front of IL and might have just been and it might be at that point that Hilda might have had that something related to that if there was no account connected to IL might be the new so definitely yet I'm looking during that whole interaction between the IL and between them and between them that point might have been the phrase to prevent on Kirito and bring down Kirito so Villa might have protect Villa so they most likely have certainly lose their body and turn into a soul that Villa might have probably really want a body to fight and take get back revenge on Kirito. So that's makes Villa might have been it might have been Villa that made the offer to IL that is the Villa would then share the secret to Villa immortality power to IL if DIL allows Villa's soul or to merge with DIL soul and so might also have the consequence of the IL's already existing power as well, suffering increasing as well might be also the reason if the IL might have increased. And basically in that way, at open and the DIL and twin soul as well might be person needed so everything DIL is seeing at might be also will be that person will be also twin soul separate DIL that is also seen and like the same time they also the real person twin so that until ultimate difference until merging the soul of twin DIL ultimate goal might have been to that means to bring down to get revenge and bring down exam and that is to be the ultimate role of the last thing. But in the case of Quinla, it might her ultimate goal might have been after turning its soul might have been to after merging the soul of the and Quinla that ultimate goal might have been to get revenge from Kirito and down Kirito and once again be the role of the internet. So after souls might have merged and this that sharp increase in power might have happened to DIL. Along with DIL, both in learning the secrets of immortality. At that point, I'm doing both DIL in might have decided to finalize as their ultimate goal to nothing say or just one among it, interface or the last alone, but to rule over and to take off to be the ultimate ruler of both the interface and the left and the might be along the lines maybe DIL as well as Queen might have the Japanese sword might have came down to the countries now might have set up the ultimate sword at that point. Certainly, what might happen was during. Certainly, implement trends from that IL right now will be starting putting on that actual fake acting as well as asset basically is to be that loyal subordinate of but in the right might be the actual situation that certainly the IL alone at present might be secretly having that theorem in that can actually find out the weakness of but then just usually betray and take out that and for the IL to be kind of person that to be or of both the interface the data it might be the case implementation but that certainly won't might certainly not be the case in the case of all the other one among the all the remaining nine general course leaders of all those remaining remaining nine guilds including for them they might be totally absolutely serious and genuine about wanting about the increase to be the subordinate of is but because I'm certain in that long distance path in but might have been extremely for that whole of the dark of week. So absolutely no one in like the last three might have been able to like might have been what might have been like the case, especially in a presentation. So like and actually might have been extremely scary and villainous kind of like a role of like that like even like the uh, inhabitants of like the that way themselves that might have fear. Exactly, and usually it might have been someone from like the human family who might have eventually ended up that okay in an unexpected manner, like okay, might have been awkward and difficult that in like that system wow this might have taken place in like what might have been the case. So like since then like I'm coming after like and that way like even like the inhabitants in like the north of the might have been like complete like one piece of like that they are even a stick role of but might be like the case and that way they might have no but that might be the reason for like them after like let's just decade second like them totally locking and I'm like just to feel like I'm thinking that like just body might have not disappeared. What might have happened might have been like them all like the inhabitants of like the last of India like it might be due to like like just like also like them probably deciding to like with vectors like body in within this like highly tight and steel and putting in the chain like locking that up with like the chains and everything might have been what might have happened like the noise of the 50 meters per minute. So definitely at something like it might have been certain absolute shock for that with like the return of with but and like even though they don't like the other generals might not be faced with like the return of Bitcoin might be they don't even have them fear of something like that still that they might be feeling us like they have no other choice but to like totally follow all the commands of it because like of that recipe. So think about according to like the story like always like then at present like always like 9 or 10 that might have heard from that the stories of like the legend that's like from like the ancient past. Might have been like as for like the God state as well in like second that there like like story or like history connected to it like which like the things in like in the frequent ways like would be a similar thing in like the dark way the way that has no history of that comes to that maybe right now itself and so different like but probably will be like about like wanting that absolute warmth but like the students are big and like basically like while all of them placing their absolute as like their absolute target on this like problem on like the interface right and it should be their top priority and should bring Alice towards like but it should be their top priority. Will be nice like question will be I consider handling will be declaring all to all like the and basically at that point I'm going to bring that Victor for me will be for me feeling instantly feeling uneasy and like afraid for like and so that we it's only say only say we questioning Vector and like we asking Vector after that why Vector need and suddenly we feel that for interaction like I'm that we it will be that really satisfaction for the thing in like okay it's turning against that Vector and basically like deciding to like take deciding to like stop Vector for any means and basically still like it's at that point we didn't that the best to like convince like all the other remaining skills members to like only turn against that vector and basically to bring down vector but like I'm bring none of probably like in the like two weeks are in that it's always said that I think that one by against like but we are like in front of like the huge volume of like the remaining skill members like and that uh but like easily lack of and depleting books are like it's won't even standing nothing and going on with a chance against like something superior spend for like this like synapse therapy. So that way like and like it's badly injured like it's like probably being thrown out of like the fact like kind of power complete level of power like by the like within up and like all the subordinates like basically proceeding according to like the honor of that is like the synapse that is visible. Yet like even though badly injured like it's still managing to like escape from like the dark state and it made it to like the industry. And by the time it maybe like the war will be going on between like the data state and like the industry. That was like an topic really like itself second is that vector like totally capturing and like it's an element. So definitely it will be that shock of that and like affect the different happening right in front of like it and also not would be would have made it to it by then. Like that shock would be what sitting in that kid book back to like novel and basically and then like the team of like Hitbo, like the team of like Hitbo and also now he getting off to that last like to save and like I'm just like that at that point along the way like I'm even like was like them running into like with some like scenarios that I'm because of like it might be a situation where like crypto and persona being in a situation where like they might be injured and like might be having like could actually going on so like them deciding to like temporarily are stuck at some cave and at that point like them don't be finding maybe it's stuck there or like in terms of previous scenarios are like mentally them with the thing like this that millions from like philosophy attacking just that person picks up and then totally assuming that maybe picks up is like from like the hint that we are naming that them saving with and maybe them but hiding in that cave to like a stuff and that to that and like that and interaction with that with and that interaction like get as well as also not getting that actually solving revelation of like a realization that which of that the actual part of that and that Alice is actually from like the dark freak. That's an individual kind of like a related kind of relation kind of like an individual possible scenario is what I'm literally putting in today. And you know, friends are right now that is definitely it might be definitely due to that vectors like gameplay or like counting that the like a super user account that like that is pre associated with that vectors like uh player captain like Indian player captain like they instantly that Miller might have got access to it while having the like memory intact of that the real world and about like objective state and the whole thing. Certainly my friends so like why should I into like what's the world of the world that lead into that there is account being that is a user account like that specialty but like what it will be having this like memory intact but like also that the ability will be also having like instant access to like the memories of like the past history of like the player can provide. And so maybe the reason for that might be how that with again in love like right now instantly being able to that talk about like the past history of like and the past battles of like the Indian gaps but might be like a women spirit. So like for like the years friend as well I'm like definitely this like dark knight account as well might be even though it's not a super user account that would be like in terms of hierarchy like after like the super user account of Netflix in like the darker thing like the second top tier account might definitely be of like the dark knight account of that possible. Miller might be like the case yet like I'm going solely into that in playing not the super account which might definitely be the case like in the case of like Wasago like account like the dark knight like Wasago might definitely not be while having like the memory of that the real world intact like still Wasago has these no awareness or like knowledge about like the past history of that Dr. Free or like the past history of that vector or anything. Might be like the case that we might be it's like the scenario that happens. So like the player was putting that in the case of unlike in the case of like vector again will approach like who's probably on absolutely confidently and boldly like streets of like the past history of that like in the case of like Vasa doing like I'm looking like more like a clumsy way scenario where like Vasa will be totally saying yeah and like will be totally going along with like everything but will be saying without having absolutely no idea at all. Even after like the digestion that as and like that made like Vasa Blanc will be having like king area tour as for like in the country between like weapon or like the top street and after like the still the creative really trying to like go along with it and playing along with it and it is like a big acting by saying yes just like in the scenario that in which like I'm totally having that Vasado totally playing and not knowing and not has any knowledge about all this. Could be one thing that I'm just trying definitely be like DIN that I'm just doing like to be like the first character that will be first format only character who will be like to be finding out about like Vasado uh, in contrast to that vector is that changing scenario that and definitely that definitely I and definitely eventually totally manipulating and breaking Vasago and like taking advantage of like Vasago lack of like might be like the case and definitely to like extract out information from like social information from like Vasago connecting to like them both like Miller as well as like Vasago only having that 24 hours to like complete the mission and about like the real information about like the real world and how like they are so separate as well as like they are connected to find and catch up and it's like this need and they have only 24 hours to like do it like basically these crucial factors and crucial information like even though why this right now this information I'm going to putting for like about the method of the environment between level between the soul which might be more known to like the soul of like BIL like neither PIL nor like twin lab might be get to that fully comprehend like this information about the real one still like fact that like the time limit of 24 hours and basically how can they separate like the vector as well as like classical is like a vector is for like to find and capture and before that time limit runs out, like three factors that ends up bring up me on realization that which I'm going to something happening for every IL, like the IL will be probably taking advantage of that would be the IL, and then when we will be so we see this like social limitations and factors of that factor has like an opportunity to like probably take advantage of use and take advantage of against that factor that eventually bring down but so that like the IL alone like in a story so that is so that like, they will be able to like, eventually bring down back and basically eventually roll over both laps in the rail development not a bit. Along the lines of like in the cosmic finance that I'm still like so got to the things now like agricultural scenario around the different like IL could be eventually getting all this knowledge in the IL will be switching up goal and basically at that point like fixing absolute priority highest top priority of like a goal at that point to that basically as soon as you get to hands before like the process get to hands so that actually from quite threatening to like take out hands like speaking like complete like eventually facilitating like the like decay of like would be along the lines of the different actually electric and the planet. It's like one possibility that I'm different. So like that way maybe electric and getting to like Alice and that's a feeling like affecting Alice. Even before like to get to Alice. So like one possible scenario that I'm or like the other possible scenario that I'm referring for like maybe being after like capture Alice and put Alice into like any kind of like for like the finding that I'm calling that and like to gain more knowledge from like what about and realizing how much of like a priority analysis for lecture and that way like the IL like stealthy free analysis from like think of some kind of like stage and basically like get like at that point since like the IL like making analysis and basically takes hands away and like eventually making that like sending that one of like someone needs to that absolute again like structure to the structure of like taking and skip that structure looking to that the honors of like the and that's kind of important scenario. It's also like what and right. So like the limit reaction right now is that the actuality of the contribution might be that and it might be that the incarnation of like the priest of like who elect the Kambas like my elector lead might have was like certainly like the company like might have like become last construction of like in like Kambas and that might have been how he might have even got like ended up into like in that change or as well might be like pretty certainly that might be a popular known history for like the last might be like it is with to this that name that to this so accounting, so for example, might they don't having consistent access about that knowledge that we were created. Also something that might be also well to other so that brings in knowledge level to might also think the other that like the reincarnation of that process of life at present is definitely Alice might be also the case definitely my so like that fact part when I was running that right now without much great delay that totally declaring and revealing to that kind of that happening that basically that like in the face of light have has in fact been carbonated in the percent and is like known by the name Alice in that given board. So that basically to like bring Alice to that would be like what eventually that would be exactly giving like or like that as specific for and Alice as like a target to like the in that like that one. That's like an declaring it's like in the scenario that I'm going to end up so the cutting for like in the eventual final something of like showdown battle of that war like and that very same path of prayer speaking itself was like Alice that the different might be that the reincarnation of that system of like involvement and control in like eventual destruction of that either Vecta or like that or like Kaiba while the foreign navy actually in like the like Kaiba that will dive into like the virtual world of what has like by using like the super account of like one spaceship. It's also like about that. So like in that final showdown, wow, that like I'm bringing is like the make it to like use from again going up again like and maybe for it to be like just Kirto versus like advanced stage Kaiba as like advanced stage and like Kirto versus Kaiba that way or like the team of the Kirto and Asuma versus like Kaiba as like advanced stage and in that battle when that Indian battle between the will be taken place like I'm remembering just like reincarnation of like purposes of like which might be at like nothing like probably playing that absolute major role in that even delivering about like delivering about that absolute perspective like Kaiba. It's like the other public that so like playing once again this is their repeating itself and like I just like playing that absolute role in that in delivering about the discussion of like the Kaiba or that again the like in scenario that I'm right my so like the new information right now is that we got to is like most likely I'm thinking that so right now it is currently hiding in that the home of that again in the might be replicate and that it might be replicated according to that like 25 that it's not right now we using the like subordinate to lack of the strict uh, like vector into that topic gap where like so, in that moment and police can be and patient waiting for that moment while that's why vector would be topic was guard because like it's sort of the part of it for like it's sort of that but the direct attack against like from the and they're putting in like it's things are getting taken off and not even standing a chance and not being able to like even like the tiny bit of like any damage to that vector. I do want that to pass to all the spot like it's not so like this will be definitely currently at present like it will be all part like this strategy to like how vector so just like the to like the maximum so that like at that point that for like the fix up to like found form against me like launches like no power attack on like vector at that in such a situation so involves that way itself might be able to like take out might be the case is definitely well celebration. So this is exactly the scenario that I'm going to yeah, like I'm looking like things like account like super account and like the top tier account like and like there will be that even with like while vector would be in like dark down state like even then like I'm looking like vector might still be able to like have such superior like high reflex skills that I'm looking like even while under such a scenario where like while with sort of the all of seven like don't that I'm still be attacked on like vector to like take out but still have like vector was like superior reflex like and like to be like strong that and the attack of that mix-up and basically that would be straight away most likely I'm trying to be like about to take out that mix-up. But like at that very last second I'm trying to second for that was subordinate of that mix-up that basically that protecting mix-up by getting in the way is like the scenario that way that is lack of that mix-up landing on and that subordinate of that mix-up wanted to that make is like that way that mix-up using that uh, at that point itself. And yeah, like I'm sorry, like the injured Victor, like I'm like quickly at that point, like managing to like escape from like the palace of like the scenario that I'm supposed to check. Scenario to be like Victor straight away, like somebody like so you remember one from getting them the one again and straight away get the board to like capture like mix up alive and bring this up to like to back like the player straight away declaring to like multiple things on that way uh, that looks up as like betray like but and like putting the goal that we ended up with we so like we yeah like they shouldn't like take the stuff out and like basically they should like catch up stuff and like bring it up to the and basically like will be also maybe declaring that like the first person to be able to like the one the kid and like the individual that will be capturing good stuff and like bringing good stuff to that will be rewarded by getting the internet from that declaring and basically like definitely that this stuff will be and like vector like something that will be something like like will be extremely really absolutely driven and enraged and like uh, and I'm attacked by Mr. Bad like definitely vector will be at that point and embrace and trigger that vector will be totally distinct mind like definitely he will be totally wanting that itself and to be captured and I so that people that the scope upon that result that acting is punishment would be definitely what that the show would be absolutely like planned in mind, and like to favor that punishment on like itself in like public so that like as like a lesson to send like a warning to any of the guild members who simply isn't there to like follow same path as like and even so that like they will feel that atmosphere stable thing of like ever even betray like we to like when we give such a level to like in like this will be what like like feel like planet that limit and giving the order to like the multiple guild members and like they will all like segue of and like exploring like the data something all throughout like the last week to find and capture somewhat still and that was like absolutely having like that such absolute uh skill skills that I'm like the skill managing to like successfully if even from that skill stuff starting after like listener and then maybe it will be doing that escape then like that would be like making it to like the making it to like copy like the amount and then making it to like present something and maybe I'm bringing her one positive effect that way. Even being able to make that like what that way, so being able to like maybe make it towards like by share for instance like after like crossing like the end of like straight away ending up probably running into second Alice. Then that night Alice and like so on this straight away so extremely happy and pleased and like and it's on this straight away falling like the day night has like within a like but like the industry night has to be probably confused and like would be like on realizing that like it's on the last of like like the industry night and figure listening to like believe and thinking would be saying and we would be probably feeling a little bit like content against like the thing that we focus on that made me happy. Together the lines like and should be covered with some and like my success would be like at that point like that's why I telling and saying that when I have about like the situation of like the barrier like about to collapse. So that is separating himself in the way like about the collapse and that about like the real soon incoming war by like the doctor they against like the delivery being far sooner than like the way like expecting to there and the like what's up to be that's really trying to like convince like the internet and just tell us like about like the return of like of emperor all of like Vecta and everything. That is we presenting any like for this like the attack on like that we on like we having way so much attack direct bring again on the lines like that when that's to like one and like the scenario, but like as probably means the it's like also like getting the scenario. At that point, it's like getting scenario and everything, and that way like I'm actually like anyway the scenario one like only that the after thing would be destroyed like the battle between like the trading between the and like the not game that way like there being like a huge noise and sound the different like section of like the uh barrier separating it in the way and that the way and at that point like I'm looking like and that only shockingly I realized that like this is like one was like actually that was like a genuine question like one is absolutely so and it understand like it is only at that point that like maybe and so they are starting to extend that way we need that okay the objective that what is that everything is have like not we want but also for and supposed to being through that maybe and it's like internet and maybe actually like the thought of that was and not like the thought of like the uh, of like the man in like of like all the lot of like self here and the lines and connecting to my and like at that point like he's starting to like think and at that point I'm full explained it and I can to be great in that point with the but like after like even before that like I'm like while we said we are and the rank and like and a little bit of the next of these so that it's and fully driving stuff away so like yet like stuff would be like hiding somewhere in like the particular that as well as like the scenario that I'm going to like and figure out to like find like what probably even see like the positive that stuff actually being like so part of like and so like and so we don't really think from like it's maybe being at that point that like maybe and will be getting affected by like the it's also like a conflict that I'm sure like and maybe that happening right in front of itself as well. So like about something like that. So like by the time like by then like Asuma showing up and maybe like maybe get us like from like a distance like with the zoom with like Gabriel now we get like naked to like and spin uh in time. Yeah, like it doesn't mean something in like shift of like happening and like the that way like if you like a phone getting teamed up with stuff and basically from that point on like the trio like working together and moving together so that are going to like save and like to respond to the episode right. So like the new trends right now that I'm sitting on the news for like this like Miller's like obsession with like the concept of like so might have what it's really that obsession might have totally got me extremely crazy even from Wales and past to like the point of that Miller might have it might have been solely hallucination that might have happened to Miller after taking out Alicia, the spring Alicia. Might have been definitely what might have happened is definitely so like taking out Alicia that Miller might have something hallucinated and they most likely might have imagined that of he was like witnessing so he might have written like at that point said imagining as if like uh, imagining him actually seeing like the soul of like Alicia and basically through that that is him absorbing that soul and basically him totally seeing everything Alicia has seen Alicia so have seen so far in like through such an obsession like definitely like in an extremely emotional and like extremely hallucination might have happened like Miller way back then and Miller might have been gone crazy and like back then like from that crime that Miller has committed way back then like definitely might have been who might have been like an employee or like an advisor uh the in which in like the company were run by most likely Miller's father like might have been the so like it might have been like the place to the government friends that might have been that we with like Kaiba's help that Miller might have not got caught up like something that right might have been something having the minimum trade so definitely like and I'm pretty all the way back since then like I'm like Kaiba maybe might have no Miller definitely not incredible. So like then like even after like the solar online incident uh attempt by Kaiba to like ministry to add players into like the world of like online that I think Kaiba don't even give that to Kirito and exactly. Then Kaiba might have been after then might have been disturbance for later and might have been afraid to like get that events of Kirito and might have been afraid that way to like figure out like some sort of like a different concept, a way more like if you create like a way more like range of and physical trap of like another world from which like a crypto would never be able to crypto nor any other player would never be able to like outsmart Kayaba or like defeat or even escape from like that new world like basically Kayaba might have been frantically like thinking of like basically such a new concept like figuring out such a new concept of like creating a new world even more like a new world which would be totally impossible to like escape and for make the player. So like while Kaiba might have been desperate to figure out will we can figure out such a new concept might have been when like Kaiba might have seen Miller after like a long time like a long gap. So like at that point, like I might have seen how like Miller still haven't changed and like still was like totally crazy and like had that crazy obsession with like so we went to that point. Uh might be what Kaiba might have realized and like it might be Jack Miller that might have ended up becoming like eventually ending up becoming like the inspiration like they might have ended like obsession with sports that might have eventually inspire Kaiba about like and which might have certain like that information might have been what might have influenced certain like part of me eventually ending up uh with like figuring out and ending up with this like concept of like SDL sort translate and everything like and like that way to connect like of like frames to connect like source to like a virtual world and basically that way I even like with coming up with like a concept of like the virtual create in this like virtual world like it might have been inaccurate, it might have been that was like man obsession of like been up to like for that might have been like the inspiration so we might be the action right now. It's definitely not very Portugal talked about while in the case of like Miller in like Christian was like taking off Alicia like it might have definitely been like hallucination that like Miller might have that might have happened to like Miller. Yet like under that person like after like Miller was in like what's the one as like having taken out like the subordinate of like Mr. Like you're right now person like I'm different that we it might not about the like hallucination or like an imagination of like of like but of like Miller, but like Miller would be within like due to like the scale nature, like Miller would be totally a person would be totally spot on and won't be at all hallucinating, but if we actually seeing like the actual soul memories of like fix of like subordinate uh, inactivity might be like the case in an so there's from this point on, I'm just going like this crazy obsession of like Miller and Vector like comparing like him from this point on like starting to like steadily take out like a bunch of like Fox and Dominant from like the darker tree. Not being able to control to like obsession and basically steadily starting to like take out like a bunch of like stepping out and taking out like a bunch of Fox and Dominant to that system and basically seems like an animation web. So that is like the scenario element. And especially right now with like Miller even through like the soul of like this is subordinate having seen like how this subordinate girl was like so extremely exposed to like some like label thing. So at this point like Miller will be obvious for like that need might have been definitely more like to the orders uh of like some that like basically the subordinate attempted to like take Miller out. So like the player will definitely Miller right now definitely would be summoning like the remaining still army members and basically will straight away like revealing about like it's being like a betrayal of like Vector and getting them and then straight away like setting them out to like catch them like so for even there and definitely because like definitely it would be definitely high priority as well uh for like Vector himself to like actually specifically want like the soul of like want to see like the memory of like the soul of like Vector by taking Vector out himself. Definitely one of the creation. So like to capture Vector and I went to bring this up to like to Vector would be like the form of like the two videos that we learn French and definitely like eventually want like to watch like after the three would be out in that war against like the band like strong the battle like and that might have different right now maybe for like a scenario where like without the great delay after like the war begins itself like maybe succeeding and capturing finding and capturing and this is like the scenario that again like that would be straight away bringing along with like Barcelona would be like straight away bringing and to reflecting the basically I'm looking for like an edge scenario where like vector would be using that machine in like the kingdom to like transfer like a little uh, like uh, so of like you much like to like you were thinking like the main control room. So like as per like the intended plan like I'm remembering like the scenario to be that but like we about to do that but like at that very last second I'm thinking like should be since like Alice like Alicia like basically the names are so extremely similar like and like at that very last second I'm looking like picture vector like I'm just trying to be probably having an big change of plan because of like that temptation that would be too much for him to like only instantly take out like Alice and basically uh, to absorb Alice's like soul and basically so that like they see especially even like Alice is like much like being so having such high importance and like priority and basically even in like the real world and being sought after by such big shots like basically so definitely there will be that absolute extreme temptation for like happening for like that very last second to definitely change its plans and to take out like Alice and basically to like see everything was like extremely precious like Elizabeth was like has seen throughout her journey like everything she has seen to like witness that for by absorbing Alice's soul for like better to like witness and experience like all that that would be such a cool but extremely tempting for like better that and something that and that very last second before like pushing that final button to like send and this is like still much like to like the like during like the nature of that very last second like like uh uh that vector like changing plans and like at that point itself that vector would be about to like take out like the scenario there. So like at that point I'm expecting that Master will be standing right there and we'll be seeing that going on the stand. I'm just trying that for about the dog even to like the person really having absolutely no idea at all. Won't be at all aware about this like secret extremely crazy system that of like miller to want like the concept of soul that we created. So definitely Wasado will be totally confused at that point as to that what that for like what will have been doing so like right as like that would be about to like take out like and it's like and different like and fight that would be thoroughly defeated and injured and like they won't be able to like fight back at full about like so fight like when that second after that Miller would be at like would be about to take out hands like when that possible would be totally stopping Vector like the scenario and that way like a fight between like possible and Vector could be happening in which like I'm referring like possible you know he will be like totally trying to like he will be totally confused and like trying to like how like snap out of it like and, like that's not being possible and that way like an actual fight happening between like possible the dark knight possible and like in which like definitely that will be like without much very different or like to be make for and defeating but also will be taking out like possible like scenario so like that obsession with like so wanting to like create like the memory of like the sword of like Harris would be in that would be getting so extremely crazy that like in that even though that was a role would be in real life would be someone that prefer to uh your extent would be a great one that push to that make up like like in the totally forgetting all that and taking out of like the scenario that I'm going to like that way at that point will come to like for possible that being that such an absolute shock and like straight away returning back to like the real world uh fortune of locations like the scenario back to like the real world that taken after that and bring in and that made up at that point itself like after like taking out like Vector after like taking off straight away, quickly turning back and looking for like and straight away with the thing of like basically taking out like hands. But when once he turns back like and that he will be getting that sort of surprise of like hands totally missing in that move. It's like the scenario that happened. So they might be present of the scenario to be like by but along with that was the role he like bringing like back that and it's to that drafting them to that room to like transfer and it's like unfulfilled but like but they would even bring the hands to that room itself something that have to then like that absolute comes to different like DIL would be steadily infiltrating to that room. It's like and will be steadily will be present in that room and like steadily spying on the black thing. And like that point like DIL will be shortly sharing like on this conversation between like Vector and like Darkness and like number three, like during that the conversation between them, like, I'm probably saying that I will be getting strongly getting the feeling that basically this like actual original that but as well as like the Dark Knight that Bakugo will be represented. They are not the actual original individuals who were like locked behind that room, like that individual from like the actual history of that these are like fake individuals pretending to be the somehow maybe using some sort of like unique magic might have taken over like the someone maybe from like a industry who might have been being infiltrated into technology and might have taken over like the control of like the body of like these like of like actual of investors as well as like that darkness from like the ancient history of like the last century. If you along the lines of like something that I'm within that I can put them down there certainly so definitely understand like while upon my friends eventually that fight would be ongoing within that room would be happening between like Wakaro as well as like I'm sorry, while they both would be distracted from hands during that fight like I'm definitely at that point like I'm protecting would be seeing like the opportunity and make her move and would be certainly that at two step would be abducting and basically would be the escaping like the and I put for enabled by the mechanism like an from the state so like definitely but that as well said like I like updating and then escaping it's like the from the kingdom is like the snap that I'm in that way like I'm different after like but would have defeated and taken out like lots of like but we will be having that absolute shocking and extremely frustrating plot right of like a scenario with like Alice form of it in the six or like in the scenario that I'm supposed to take and that's why when premature project point like possible points like we will be returning back that way after like getting defeated and taken out by Vector like one like possible we are coming back to like the different location at that point still come like possible it is like great body like straight away that telling like that computer expert that in their team that basically that Jina has totally gone crazy. And basically, instead of transferring as to like how website like Miller wants to like take up that as a website. Will be along the lines of also would be prevailing to like for like their team would be in such a dilemma and like in that situation. And at that point, like I'm point like maybe that would be either when Kaiba will be showing up to that exact location. To that exact area within the location. Or like I'm at that point like the company first deciding to like straight away contact and like Kaiba and update Kaiba about like the situation with that. So like maybe one of the scenarios like I'm looking like Kaiba showing up and like Kaiba at that point and the looks like the computer could have like have already revealed that basically that even these like super accounts as well as like possible on like really can only be used once that for different source that still the like the super account of that dwarf stage still vacant that and when at that point like it will be the Blake Kaiba that would be like converting them like with the screen and basically the computer product will like also when we're telling them that like Kaiba himself would be improving to that get and much like to phone like so forth. And that something at that point most likely either the computer expert or like Kaiba himself to be telling then that basically through the super account of that mostly then basically that way Kaiba at that point when I'm looking at Kaiba we can dive into like the what's the word for looking at super account like what state is like the new position up that I'm going to so like I was mentioned right now because we for like right now giving like the order to like about next to like stop like the position of like fix up the like the scenario at the end of it. So that way like the that way like I'm like with some temporarily getting saved from like getting taken off by the poisoning is like the scenario that I'm in. But like that would be for me that with like and I'm looking straight away that like prevent giving another port to like straight away put mix up in captivity in that kind of like state in like setting up just like would be like the out like most likely in that vector room itself in that setting up would be along the line of like all of like vector would be giving to the like about like the scenario that I'm saying like that way like I'm looking like vector like setting that up would example of like the consequence of like basically even that remotely attempting of that even making a betrayal against that would be along the lines of that feeling that and that all the remaining guild members will be getting at that point simply member and at that point like while all the remaining guild members will be getting integrated by with some setting by just like setting such an example like I'm just definitely in the case of MP and like she might be able to be way more mentally tough that I can like to like knock down the independent background. That's like the scenario. It would be probably still sticking to a plan, which would already wasn't even a person itself that which would be to like with that itself to like eventually find out like the weakness of like and eventually research and aspects to try to like probably take down. But would definitely be one thing that would be like strongly that I would go the thing like the I can it's definitely especially with like have I person like already has been prevent to like the like the secret of like clean up the mortality that me so that it up like that absolute goal that depended out to eventually make that self even trial now that would be still even though like the example of like so would be creating chaos within like the I can tell like the scenario that I'm doing. And I'm trying to play like record given the sport of the like which are in like some kind of like state broken like the kingdom which will be definitely for like Vecta to like late like probably absorb like the soul of like basically it's a right well to live with that in the like the full details such and all that definitely my vegetarian still I'm different like Vecta currently not being able to do that and take away like the soul so like the soul from like which are like scenario that because like of like in a scenario where like I'm different like the scenario being like it's in that in some kind of like state in like the kingdom and like I'm looking it will be walkable that it would be that standing in front of like the different picture and like would be maybe like mocking and like, or constantly mocking and making fun of the picture or something and at that point I'm looking like picture by like totally in a cunning manner like would be like totally feeling like to be able to like observe and see like the weakness in like the character of that wasn't basically that programming was like the scenario was like which the programming freaking it's like also go into that often train like them either through a triggering that which are like while water will be mocking things are like and different what is happening in like the absence the temporary absence of that but it's like the scenario that so yeah during that point like I'm different like either through triggering tactics like and different like except like while water will be mocking like it's up to be saying something and like back and like mocking was about that and that with triggering was and like that way like the confident Marcelo probably deciding uh, to lack fight lack this stuff and the cricket stuff. Maybe it's a lack of lead challenging by Marcelo the knocking stuff like that. Maybe it's that like the knocking all back and challenging Marcelo that like it feels like stronger than it's up to that and that picks up out and basically to throw it in a fight and along the line something like so one of the still the strength and different like succeeding in like manipulating like and hurting Marcelo and like basically Marcelo will be letting like mix up out of that second some kind of state and at that point like so that even though was a role is stronger like through so like superior levels of like experience like being in that and or such kind of like situation like through that experience like I'm looking after being let out of like the state like it's also we are tracking Barcelona into lack of the managing to like fully escape from like like the scenario that and that way like that would be how that and like even in like the person situation even in like the person poison situation like eventually things will be spiraling into which sort of escaping from like the last way and hopefully that making it to like that in that way eventually electing to want like the human electing and also like fight health so the final trailer and it's also like changing about the now that I'm going to again. Like the name of them right now definitely for like the separate need of like sort of like a mix up to like totally to avenge like the loss of like India like about me like might have like 20 what it might have started it might have been the missing like all the source of like that was like totally connected to after that like very interesting often are connected to like the local world of world like and like what might have happened might have been like mix of like that strange needs like avenge like the loss of Libya might have resulted in that mix of totally like by staring at like the Libya like I'm referring like what might have happened might have been mixed up might have been that mixed up like people but they might have been able to like hack some like nuclear like you or like so that like you something in that way like since like already nuclear like so that they different like vector like sentimental like vector has like so like nuclear soul like and that way due to that the screen has good gets up to like obviously nuclear while staring at like nuclear like that is might have certain like triggers like so being able to like remotely access like nuclear soul uh, even without absorbing nuclear soul might have been what might happen like that way like while activating like the powers of like nuclear soul and that way like since like currently at present like nuclear soul Vector has like absorbed it that way like uh, right now bits of might have been able to like have that way get access to like small fraction of that vectors that show power might be electrification just alone like just a fraction of like vector current flow power itself might have been what might have resulted in that current unexpected extreme power grid happening in that the poison space might be like a minimum thing like so yeah like I'm like even with like the major power of grid like that would be still strong way stronger than with some definitely membrane. So definitely I'm looking right now for it's actually like it's charging towards like trying to like bring down vector but still like in that point like initially I'm looking to be top at like 7% like power of like still I'm like right now vector like immediate of the without which great started with like immediate of the ongoing and defeating still defeating this like was an after yeah like I'm going to this like access to like arts and public that because like so power like and that because you're not like getting defeated by but like still you'll be having like more than enough power to like the full escape from like the kingdom and eventually that make it to like the world and that eventually happening like in the scenario that I understand. So like the according to my potential that lead you to like vectors like account team that of like a special use of account that like in the instantly being able to like deliver great features and having all this like knowledge about like the vector data connecting to vector and everything. And everything might be definitely the case. So like bring that right now the like the coming so of like how here is happening to like bits of like and different like even that has been like a different vector will be instantly be able to like just sense and realize that basically those are like so phrase of how it like vector and programming will be instantly able to like sense and realize that basically that Microsoft has managed to access remotely that like Microsoft has managed to like remotely access like a certain extent of like small fraction of like even if it's like a small fraction like even without solving like the code of that itself was able to like access like a certain extent of like the power of that by accessing that vector remotely accessing that vectors like soul would be along the lines of that that's your realization right now that I can that would be having definitely equal object. So like definitely I'm looking at that would be definitely that would be seen by vector and like that for her like ability which like but my throat is want to like make his own because like that's something like but has like the limitation of like only being able to experience like the sort of like another position by absorbing by taking out that individual and absorbing like the soul of that individual. So that I believe that power of that the like the ability of that gives us to be able to like remotely even access like the soul of that another person uh, without even taking out, fighting off, and like take out that person like that. And this feeling like so simplicity that I experience with that, but more feeling of like so it just will form like transformation like person would be the right thing that make it just so like to find out like how exactly if someone able to like do it and that remotely access that vector soul would be of that ending up being that's quite high priority for that right now we consider creating it like in the scenario that way we not like which are would be just one getting the escape from method of the from the technical of that right from the lab like at that point like you can like OV exchanges of share and like engaging the try to like find not only analysts but also definitely which are as well. Definitely one direction and like definitely but the maybe would be also feeling that with the that even if that with some person himself feel it, I feel like how he needed how he remotely access like the soul of like still if like absorb like the soul of like the stuff like the soul of facility automatically attaining that power of that with some to like remotely access that another individual that soul without having like fighting for like take off that individual. Be along the lines of that individual conclusion as well that will be coming up to that way to catch up and absorb that soul. There's minimum like maybe one of like the very high top priority for that but even this is also like a possibility that and like so even when she's definitely for that we start to like definitely know about being able to like take and gain control of like mastery over like his power and to be able to like use remotely uh, access like the superior power of like the remotely that through guilt that can be like that definitely like stuff definitely now being able to like achieve such a thing is like the scenarios that are visible. So like the PM will like to the solely due to like the situation of like that separate need to like happens like that also like support and everyone that like it might be more likely a one-time thing that will be happening with like the sort of like that person having this like it's power theory. It's definitely the scenario that I'm observing. Most likely, what like see what like stuff from being ever being from this point on, ever being able to like once again that get this like very same power. We are going to become about the point that it would be a free access to like the source of that like for like it's something in like it's getting this like major power of it. Get like I'm spending 5,000 like repeating the stuff. Get like it's managing like a step and like at that point it's like I'm like reserve like powers. I'm just running like would be slowly and would be quickly running back to his like normal levels of like full power is like the natural scenario that I'm also working for and my good career. And after that, like I'm like it's never being able to like once again access that the powers of that ever again is like the scenario that I'm also working for. So that's the thing on right now is that actually because of the like the camera, like I'm focusing my field of light is definitely not great. Especially since like even with like right now with like books are like being able like like access like the soul of like the trend and finding out about like the soul being uh empty and like being like empty and full alive at the same time itself actually with like that soul area itself being fully dark and pitch black. Like I'm just saying definitely it would be light that will be the power of light. That absolute power of light that the priestess of light would be having that. Usually with alone that it will be like the priestess of light alone would be having that ultimate power of light, which will be able to like shine through to be so bright, extremely bright and be able to like shine through and infrared into the light, like try and shine through into like even like the entirety of like, the soul of like and that way like turning that empty total dark soul of that uh, but into like turning it into like absolute bright white and absolutely full and that way like the soul of that vector turning from like uh, a state of like alive as well as like emptiness to like it being like whole and fully alive. I just would be only like creating such for change into like the state of like the soul of like the which would be even making it which would be like the necessary factor that would be like the weakness which would be a weakness of it which would be like which would be like the only way for like to completely turn like the that complete dark soul of black into that completely turning completely white and white and food would be like the only way for like only at that point like source spikes would be given a big event and like that would be like the only way to like take down and when using the soul might be that your state that minimum price. So that we have still remember 10% that for like Alice at like the person would be like that reincarnate of like the priestess of life. So like that we are really definitely that the Indian might add like I mean that even though Karnik having like the power of like soul and like soul fighting like definitely add a certain soul which is like had from like the creative moment that I think like Ruzo while different of usual that maybe the creative model of Optil and the technological power that like Ruzo had taken like I'm referring to that Optil as like I'm referring that would be like actual reincarnate that Optil as like soul to be like the actual reincarnation of like the respect of life from like the past. It might be like the limit. So like within that book and so like currently for that power and potential and like that so power of like the natures of life which I'm probably coming that in that final ultimate simply the sort of battle like I'm thinking that the present day and intergalactic has like will be eventually like I'm preferring like usually a situation maybe leading up to such a situation where like crypto while fighting off against like maybe like the fight being between like crypto versus like Vecta or like a company like eventually like the fight between being between like crypto versus like Kaiba at like one stage yeah, while it being maybe Asuna that will be fighting off against like so like it's like one of these two scenarios that are like, so, like at that point of the once fight happening like the presence of like Alice will be badly defeated injured, defeated, and like sideline kind of experience that even so like at that point like exactly like how like the situation like maybe mix of like desperation to like happens like the loss of like uh subordinate of the being like it's being able to like temporarily access like the soul of like for like like in similar situation like things will the fine zone fight scenario where like Alice will be desperate to like stop like surveillance forces and that way like that resulting in like that desperation resulting in like the predator that resulting in like the internet Alice being able to like constantly in that moment being able to like access like the access, like the soul of like the original Alice with like the magical power as well as like maybe simultaneously also and that way possibly like accessing like the power of like the pieces of light and basically that way like the interference light as maybe like pointing up soul and basically on up soul like magical powers of like shining white bright brilliant white light like happening and that resulting in like basically like pictures like soul like at that point like turning like completely full and basically turning completely white, right, white like scenario. And at that point, I'm just like that force strike, like either Asuna or like it landing on like but which will be taken out, like and defeating and taking out. But at that point, through like and like that's the even final scenario is what I'm looking, and that how I'm looking like that release will be eventually getting executed and taken out is like my engineering and person rate. But my perception right now is that basically after like 10 like accessing like the source of like vector like and some might out of they also had like while realizing like the nature of that the ally as well as empty nature of like the soul of like the dark soul of like but like like but so that temporary access we might also gain like that realization like that knowledge that like basically it's definitely that the only person who will be able to like, create like the situation which could be make it possible for like the defeat of like the would be only like the priestess of light and like that like the reincarnation of like the priestess of light at present is definitely is on the and it will be along the lines of like that instant realization while commonly acting like the soul of like the like user might have right now. I think it's definitely that knowledge right now might be like a human creation, might be the reason for like him right now telling that story to like something in media and like basically focusing on escaping will be definitely to like as soon as possible make it to that human suffering escape and make it to like the industry and like soon as and hope to like basically find uh, ads who might be actually just got might you might have been working for this entirety of like this past year for like a great number of years and wasn't might have not been able to find that yet like still with that time being so short and like the one by like the alpha against like the human about to happen even within such short time walking to like a week for uh to like even with through some miracle walking to be able to like be able to find Alice and be able to like make Alice understand that basically that she is like 20 that and like the only person who will be able to eventually cause like the degree of that the villain's treatment. It will be most likely with this in that like right now it's up to mind of escape from like the person of like from like person of like events and like from like the thing that right now might be like the case actually to the wish that anyone there. So like with the redemption right now was for like that absolute fearlessness of like but while Facebook like the app that absolute power of which most likely by accessing that like a fraction of the total power of that so which of accessing like so like basically get like I'm expecting that fraction of like vectors like power that it's attained and displayed like might have been far intimidating and superiorly strong up when compared to like the strength of like the all the general including the L as well might be like the case that Neiman 300. So like even while faced with such absolute power like that absolute calm and fearless state of that Emperor Vecta might have genuinely right now probably impressed uh, DL right now. Might be the reason for like her being like that exact person to like right now which is that is like even declare that whole to that came for all of them to like hey and respect that. Especially maybe the rental like the and right now when we are genuinely impressed by overwhelming not only by the overwhelming to be the strength of that vector, but also by that absolute boldness and fearlessness of vector as well. Might be that the case that we might be very unfortunate. So and it will be all due to that even including DL that none of like the generals present there like might have even realized like what actually might have happened and they might have all assumed that like that power upgrade sudden power upgrade that was displayed might have been like the actual true level the strength of that stuff might be along the lines that they might have all assumed without realizing what had actually happened which might have definitely been like I think that temporarily being able to like act and get possibly a fraction of like the top hours of like when we like the living premise. So every day to do the reason like I'm definitely even TL might be genuinely seen starting with lack but again like I'm totally pretending like even so like I'm totally pretending like definitely pretending for like DL to like definitely not for still keep up on her ultimate goal which might be definitely be for herself to be like that absolute single ultimate goal of the human race and like that. And so like even the shocking realization that this might have only happened to like real right now about like the extreme power gap between levels and like the levels of like power of like and like even like the level of power of like and like the level of power of like but to be along the lines and like the end of the thing. But even so, like I'm solely due to like the lack of the at present lack of the finding out about the secret of that being that more and more like in that in that soul and when being merged with that uh, with uh, reflecting soul. Like so, what might have happened might have been like exactly like how Vecta can basically absorb like the soul of like the subordinate of like which are like in a similar manner like through like through like the consent of Latvia like what might have happened might have been the absorbing like the soul of like Latvia might have been what might have happened that way like the instantly might have attained like the knowledge about like the secret of that Latvia like immortality might be the case of neither so like the like immortality being on the side of Latvia that there might have been just that absolute uh, boost of confidence that might have happened to that player that definitely she will definitely be like no matter like the no matter how formidable she will be strong even with like showing up back with like and as well as even if it's with like the display of that uh absolute fearlessness of like even in while faced with like this like or instant like so certainly at present, even though lactate would be probably absolutely certain that like the power gap between lactate and this lactate was far extreme way more than lactate having an immense. Still TLM would definitely also confident that like still with that absolute strength and with that still be fit by the and eventually they definitely able to like after like finding out that secret weakness he gets that like real would be totally confident that like she would be able to give like still be figure out like the secret of that spectrum regardless of how much the police would be really strong, prosecutors that were definitely could have to be and maybe the fact that like, even with all that power being only a mere mortal as well would be lack would be as well would be lack would be all collectively the factor that would be lack giving lack the that absolute hope that she would definitely be succeeding in still even while the odds look more so favorable still still be able to like figure out the weakness of black and to be able to like bring down uh, and at that point, like DL would be ending up becoming that absolute killer of like both like the human as well as like the human world as well as like the last week. So like this both that like DL would be even two different person as well would be probably having like she might not have been on like both of that both it's definitely the activity of it is even as content is definitely much clear.